There's something that fleet managers at Toyota, Nissan, and Honda have known for decades that has never made it into a single owner's manual. You won't hear it at the dealership. Your mechanic won't bring it up unprompted, and you will absolutely never see it mentioned in a television commercial, but it exists. And the strangest part of all is that the roots of this system trace back to 1952, when Japan was clawing its way out of the post-war wreckage with empty pockets and a desperate need to squeeze every last drop out of every tank of fuel. What they developed back then, quietly refined over generations, is exactly what I'm going to walk you through today. And the best part? The full protocol costs you somewhere between $4 and $9. That's it. Before I get into the details, I need you to understand why this actually matters right now, in the present moment, not just as some historical curiosity. The average American driver spends somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a year on gasoline. That number has been climbing. And yet the conversation around fuel efficiency almost always goes in one of two directions. Either you buy a hybrid, which costs you $20,000 to $30,000 more up front, or you drive less, which for most people is simply not an option. Nobody ever talks about the third path. The one that doesn't require a new car, doesn't require lifestyle changes, and doesn't require you to become an engineer. That's the gap this fills. Now let me take you back to 1952. Japan's economy was devastated, fuel was expensive and scarce. The government and the emerging automotive industry were under enormous pressure to figure out how to keep vehicles running longer, further, and on less. What came out of that era wasn't a single invention. It was a philosophy, a systems approach to vehicle efficiency that treated the car as an interconnected organism rather than a collection of separate parts. That philosophy got baked into the DNA of Japanese fleet management, the networks of commercial vehicles, government cars, and industrial trucks that need to run reliably for hundreds of thousands of miles at the lowest possible operating cost. And three specific elements of that philosophy survived, were tested, refined, and are still being used quietly today. Those three elements are PEA fuel treatment, precise tire pressure management, and 0W20 synthetic oil. On their own, each one does something. Together, used in a specific sequence, they do something that most people would call impossible. Let's start with PEA because this is the one that surprises people the most. PEA stands for polyetheramine. It's a detergent additive, and it works at the molecular level inside your fuel injectors and intake valves. Here's the problem it solves. Over time, every engine accumulates carbon deposits. It doesn't matter how new your car is, how well you maintain it, or how good the gas is that you buy. Carbon builds up. It coats the tips of your fuel injectors, disrupting the spray pattern. Instead of a fine, precise mist of fuel entering the combustion chamber, you get an irregular, partially clogged stream. The fuel doesn't atomize properly. The combustion is incomplete. You burn more fuel to get the same power output. It's that simple. And this happens gradually, invisibly, which is exactly why most drivers never connect it to the creeping decline in their fuel economy over months and years. PEA dissolves those deposits. It's one of the only compounds that actually works on polymerized carbon inside an engine without requiring you to take anything apart. The fleet managers in post-war Japan didn't have access to modern PEA formulations, obviously, but the principle of using fuel-soluble detergents to maintain injector cleanliness was already being explored by that era's engineers. Modern PEA-based fuel system cleaners, the ones you pour directly into your gas tank, cost between $4 and $9 at any auto parts store. You'll see them under brand names, but what you're looking for on the label is that specific compound, polyetheramine, not polyisobutylenamine, which is a cheaper alternative that does less. Not generic detergent additives, PEA specifically. One treatment, added to a nearly empty tank before you fill up, gives it maximum contact time with the entire fuel system as it works its way through. Most people who do this report a noticeable difference in throttle response within a single tank. The efficiency gains show up on the second and third tank as the cleaning process completes. Now here's where the system thinking becomes important, because PEA alone is only part of the equation. Tire pressure is something every driver has been told to care about since they first got their license. Check your tire pressure, keep it at the recommended PSI, fine. But what the standard advice misses completely is the precision element and the timing element. The recommended tire pressure printed on the sticker inside your door jamb is a baseline. It's calculated for an average load, average temperature, average driving conditions. It is not optimized for efficiency. Japanese fleet protocols use a different number. They run tires at the higher end of the manufacturer's acceptable range, not overinflated to the point of creating handling problems or uneven wear. but deliberately and precisely at the upper boundary of what the tire and vehicle manufacturer have deemed safe. The difference between running at the baseline PSI and running at the upper acceptable limit is roughly 1 to 2% in rolling resistance. That sounds tiny. It isn't. Across a full tank of gas, across a full year of driving, it compounds into a measurable reduction in fuel consumption. But here's the part that almost nobody does correctly. Tire pressure needs to be checked cold, not after a commute, not after sitting in the sun for 3 hours. First thing in the morning, before the car has moved, is when you get an accurate reading. Heat expands the air inside your tires and gives you a false high reading. Checking and adjusting after driving means you're working with inaccurate data. Fleet operators check cold, adjust to the upper acceptable range, and check again seasonally because temperature changes affect pressure significantly. A 10-degree drop in ambient temperature costs you roughly 1 psi. Over a winter, unchecked tires can lose 3 to 5 psi from temperature alone, quietly dragging your fuel economy down the entire time. The third element is 0W20 oil, and I want to explain why this particular specification matters rather than just telling you it's better. Engine oil has 2 jobs that are relevant to efficiency. It lubricates moving parts to prevent friction and wear, and it has to flow quickly enough at startup to protect those parts before the engine reaches operating temperature. The numbers in oil specifications describe viscosity. The first number, the one before the W, describes cold weather flow. The lower that number, the thinner the oil is when cold, and the faster it reaches critical engine components during those first few seconds after you turn the key. Those first seconds are when the most wear happens and when the most energy is wasted overcoming friction. A 0W20 oil flows almost like water when cold. Conventional 5W30, which is what millions of American cars run on, is noticeably thicker at the same temperature. That thickness means more resistance. More energy from your fuel going into overcoming internal engine friction rather than moving your car forward. Toyota adopted 0W20 as a factory fill specification across most of their lineup years, before it became widely discussed in American consumer circles. Nissan followed, Honda followed, not because it's dramatically better for engine longevity and isolation, though it is quite good, but because the efficiency gains across a fleet of thousands of vehicles added up to numbers that made serious financial sense. The math on a single car is less dramatic but still real. Independent testing has shown fuel economy improvements of 1 to 2% from switching to a lower viscosity oil within the manufacturer's approved range. Combined with the PEA treatment and the tire pressure optimization, you're stacking gains that individually look modest but together produce a result that feels surprisingly significant. Here's the sequence that matters. You don't do these things randomly or independently. You do them in order, and you do them together. Start with the PEA treatment. Pour it into a tank that has less than a quarter of fuel remaining, then fill up completely. This maximizes the concentration and contact time. Drive normally for that full tank. On your second fill up, check and adjust your tire pressure cold, targeting the upper end of your manufacturer's recommended range. At the same time, if you're within range of your next oil change, switch to 0W20 if your vehicle's manufacturer approves it, which you can verify in your owner's manual in under 60 seconds. Many vehicles that left the factory filled with 5W30 are fully approved for 0W20 by the same manufacturer. The spec is right there, people just don't look. After 3 tanks running this full protocol, you'll have data. Your car's trip computer, if it has one, will show you your average fuel economy. If you've been tracking fill-ups manually, the math will be in the numbers. Fleet managers don't guess, they measure. And the measurement consistently shows that the combined effect of these 3 elements outperforms any single one of them by a margin that validates the system's approach. Now I want to address the skepticism that I know some of you are feeling right now because it's legitimate. The fuel additive industry has a long and undistinguished history of selling miracle products that do nothing. Seafoam, Lucas, Gumout, Techron, and dozens of others have been marketed with claims ranging from realistic to laughably false. So why is PEA different? Because it's not a claim made by a marketer. It's a finding from independent fuel system research that has been replicated multiple times, and it's the reason that the top-tier gasoline standard exists. Top-tier certified gasoline contains minimum levels of PEA-based detergents because the research was conclusive enough that it changed industry standards. Adding a concentrated PEA treatment to a tank of fuel that already contains some detergent additives is simply doing more of what the evidence already supports. It's not magic. It's chemistry applied consistently. The reason this combination has stayed relatively obscure in mainstream American car culture is not a conspiracy. It's simpler than that. None of these 3 things makes anyone significant money. A $9 bottle of fuel cleaner used 4 times a year is $36 of revenue. A tire pressure gauge costs $3. Switching oil specifications costs the same as any other oil change. There's no upsell, there's no subscription, there's no expensive service visit. The dealership service department makes its money on diagnostics, parts, and labor-intensive maintenance. Telling you to buy a bottle of something at the auto parts store and check your tire pressure in the morning is not a revenue-generating conversation for them. Japanese fleet operators don't have that conflict of interest. Their incentive is pure. Run the vehicles as efficiently as possible for as long as possible at the lowest operating cost. That alignment of incentives is exactly why the protocol that emerged from their operational practices is worth paying attention to. It wasn't developed to sell you something. It was developed to work. One more thing that doesn't get said often enough. This protocol isn't just about saving money on gas, though it does that. It's about engine condition over time. Carbon deposits that PEA removes don't just hurt fuel economy. They cause misfires, rough idle, hesitation under acceleration, and long-term injector damage. Properly inflated tires don't just reduce rolling resistance. They wear evenly, last longer, and handle better in emergency situations. Lower viscosity oil doesn't just reduce friction losses. It protects your engine better in the critical seconds after cold starts, which is where a disproportionate share of engine wear occurs over a vehicle's lifetime. You're not just squeezing more miles out of a tank, you're extending the working life of a machine that costs you tens of thousands of dollars. The return on $9 has almost never looked this good. The system they built in 1952 out of necessity, refined through decades of fleet operation, and validated through modern chemistry, is available to you right now, today, for the cost of a fast food lunch. $4 to $9. A tire gauge you probably already own or can buy for $3. And 10 minutes of your time in a cold driveway before work. That's the whole thing. That's what the fleet managers knew, and the dealerships never told you.